I want to go through some basic things in Mudbox. I'm going to follow the procedure that the lesson online goes through as much as possible. Maybe some differences in the way I approach things in Photoshop, for instance. So what I want to do is I'm going to start from scratch with the human body model here. Things may be a little slow, running the screen capture and everything else at the same time could be a little taxing. All right, I'm going to go ahead and let it create a new paint layer. So the first thing I want to do, I'm going to take a look at the UVs. This is the layout that I want to work with the unwrapped UVs. So to get this set up, pretty much I want to use Photoshop to set up my layers. Now to do that, I'm going to start with a couple things here. First of all, I will go ahead and put like a skin color in here. I mean, your first lesson was to create a skin layer with skin textures. I don't have that set up here. So I'm just going to go in and flood the paint layer with that color. So that's my skin color. Now I want to go into Photoshop. So this is the UV map, and you might not be sure which of these go to which item. So I'm going to mark it up just a little bit before exporting this to Photoshop. So I'm going to go and select some colors where I can tag things. I'm going to pick a blue color. One thing I want to do is kind of mark where the waist is. So I'm going to go in and paint that in wherever you decide the waist should be. Then I'm going to pick a different color code things a little bit here. I want to know where the arm is, and I'm treating both arms together. And I'm going to draw a line around where I think the wrist might be so that I can see where that division is. Now you don't have to do this part, but I think it's kind of helpful to color code things a little bit. The legs, and try to mark where you think the division might be here, and I'm doing it kind of broadly because I'm not really sure. And mark the legs here too. All right, so I have some color coding on here. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to right click, and this is probably off screen for you, but I am selecting Export Channel to PSD. I did this before. I'll do New Skin. And now I want to go into Photoshop. All right, here I am in Photoshop. I can see my UV unwrapped here. And you can see that I've tagged things, so I know that this is a leg, and this is a leg. This is the head, the neck. And so here on the body, on the torso, you can see that this is the front of the neck, and this is where it connects to the back of the neck, the legs, and I have an indication of where the waist is, which I'm going to want because I'm going to make a separate material for the shirt and for the pants. All right, so that's all on this layer here, and then this is the UVs displayed here. Okay, so to set this up, what I want to do is use the layer masking approach that they talk about in the book as like a second stage. In here, I could, put a texture here, for the face. I could have put a texture here for the shirt and the arms and work that way. But I'm going to follow the approach in the book where you basically have like a whole layer here of like cloth and a layer of leather, and then you control where it's applied in Mudbox using layer mask. So I'm going to create a new layer here to have a backdrop for my UVs, and I'm going to fill this with black. So I have white and black here. So I'm going to just do a fill with black. I have some contrast here. Now what I'd like to do is, I might want to keep this separate, but I'm going to make a copy of the UVs, unlock that one, and merge it down. So I have a layer of black with the UVs marked on it. I'm going to hide the other one here. So to create my layer mask, I'm just going to very simply use my magic wand. Click out here to select all the areas outside of the UVs, and then invert that to have a selection for just the UV areas themselves. Now there's some space in between these selections. If we zoom in here, if I wanted to get an idea what the spacing is here, I could bring out the ruler and kind of measure the distance between these, and that would show up in my info. So here you see that there's a fair amount of space between. There's like maybe 28 pixels, something like that. Based on the angle, at some places maybe less. So I'm going to close that. Alright, so one reason I did that is that for my selection for the UV areas, I'm going to be creating a mask, and I'm going to expand these selections out a little bit so I don't get any halo around the edges. I want to have a mask that completely covers the UVs. So I'm just going to go in and modify my selection by expanding it a little bit. Looks like we'd have room to go out like 6 pixels or something. And you see that I still have some space, but now I have a little bit of bleed around my selections here. Now what I'm going to do with this selection is I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to fill that with white now. Okay, so now I have a layer mask that covers all of the different UVs. What I'm going to do now is create layer masks for just particular areas where I want different materials. And I'm going to set this up for the cloth material. Now this layer just has white on it. So I'm going to separate these off onto a different layer. And I'm just going to use the polygonal selection so I can thread my way through here. Might want to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to select the parts that I want. And actually, because this is for the shirt, I'm going to go up to where I think the waist was. Just go straight across there. Okay, so I think this is the shirt area. I could hide this layer and see, it looks like I hit about where I want the waist to be. I do want it to go straight across there, so I am going to use the rectangular marquee, just add onto my selection here so it's straight across. I might actually want it to curve down here, but I just want to make sure that it matches on the sides here. So with this selection, what I want to do is cut that to a new layer. So I'm going to go up to Layer, New, via Cut. So now I have a layer that has all the other areas that I'm not using, and I have a layer that is a mask, a good layer mask, particularly if I display it on black, that is where I want the shirt to be. So for this, I have this layer here that has the UVs merged into it, but I'm going to go ahead and create a black layer and fill that. Okay, so this would be a perfect shirt layer mask. And I'm going to make a comp for that, a layer comp. You don't have to do this, but this is, if I was making a lot of these, this is what I would do. Layer comps basically remember what layers you have turned on. So this would be a shirt mask. And I'm going to use that with the cloth layer, but what it is for the shirt. visibility position. I just need visibility to be remembered here. So I have that. Then I'm going to go ahead and say that I want to have a leather pants layer. Basically, I would want the legs and this here. I'm going to go ahead and create a selection. I'm going to zoom in here, make sure I thread my way between the legs and the feet. You know, there are different ways you could select this. But I thought I'd demonstrate it this way. So if I zoom out, that is part of my leather, and then I want this part here too, which attaches to it. Try the rectangular marquee, hold down the shift key, go down. Just want to make sure I have this. I should be able to get this with the rectangular marquee tool just fine. Okay, so this is on a transparent background, so I don't have to have a tight selection here. I just want to make it clean. So making sure I have the right layer selected here. Again, I'm going to do layer new via cut. And now I have what would be a good layer mask for the pants. So I'm going to make a new layer comp here. Pants mask. So I'm going to hide that. So just so you know, the idea of layer comps is, I can have different layers turned on. And then with the layer comps, I could go and just click on that and say, show me the shirt mask, show me the pants mask. And then I could go in and hide that and have just the skin. So this is skin texture. A little better color there. And I'm going to fill. So this is my new skin color on this layer here. And I have a layer comp for that. So I can go back and forth between these. And I'm going to use these to export the files that I need for Mudbox. I'm going to bring in a couple other things. I want to bring in, well, actually this looks like a nice leather texture here. I'm going to copy this image to the clipboard. When I went in here, I did a Google image search and I'm at 3dmd.net. Okay, so this is where I'm stealing the image from. I need to give credit where credit is due. So I'm going to copy this image to the clipboard. When I did a search, I went into the settings for search and selected search for 4 megapixel images. And so this one ought to be a good resolution for what I want to do. So I'm going to copy the image to the clipboard, go back to Photoshop, paste. All right, so this leather came in. Let's see how it matches up with my pants layer. Okay, so this is the pants layer. Okay, so here I have the area where the pants will be, here, and the legs up here. And here's my texture. I just want to make sure I have texture everywhere where the mask is, but I also want texture where the shirt will be. But just to make this, just to simplify this a little bit, I'm going to copy this around. There might be a seam here in the middle, but I'm not going to worry about that. Although, let me show the shirt area. Maybe I will shift it up so that there's no seam within the shirt. Or the leg. But I might have a seam going down the center of the body. That's fine with me. So I'm going to Alt drag this over. So I'll probably have a seam there. And merge these layers down. Do the same thing. I'm going to Alt drag a copy up here so that I have leather. And again, I mean, up here there's no seams I have to worry about, so this should be seamless, this should be seamless, if my texture is indeed seamless. And if I wanted leather on the fingers, I could copy down here as well. In fact, why don't I just drag some leather down there? I'm not going to be particular about that. And then merge these three together. So I'm going to call this leather. I'll say texture, but I'm probably going to be using this as a bump map. Now I'm going to grab the cloth texture. Alright, I've repeated some of the steps here. Brought in some new materials. If I go through my layer comps, you see now I have a layer mask for the shirt area, layer mask for the pants area. I created one for skin so I could have some control over that. Then I have a layer that's skin texture, and this is just a solid color. I don't have anything painted on it actually. A cloth texture, leather texture. Now the cloth texture, I'm going to be bringing this in as a bump map, so I don't really need the color. And to see what it actually looks like, grayscale, I have a black and white adjustment layer here. And I think that's the way I want to bring it in. So I'm going to go ahead and update my layer comp here to reflect that. Now, one way of bringing things in would be I could bring this in as, a diffuse layer or as a bump map layer where I have the different bump maps kind of composited together and bring that in. But I'm going to try the other approach where I bring in a whole layer of each texture. So I want all of these. I'm going to export all of this. So I'm going to use a script to do that. Script, and you can't see it down here. I'm selecting layer comps to files. And it's going to take each of these layer comps and generate a file. Okay, so here's the layer comps to files script. I'm going to run this to save each one of these as a separate image. I'll use PNG24, that sounds fine. I don't really need a prefix. I'm just going to put these all in this folder here. Alright, you see here it saved these images, it numbered them. I didn't put a prefix, so it starts with this underscore. It has the name of the layer comp, so I can identify it. And these are the files I'm going to be working with in Mudbox. To free up some memory, I'm going to go ahead and save and exit